This is a homework problem from the 6.2 homework set. It wants us to solve this linear equation. So what I need to do is isolate the x. What that means to isolate the x is that means eventually you want to have x equals and then just whatever it ends up equaling. So there's the x right there that we're trying to isolate, and we want to get it by itself. Okay, so let's go through the process of how we're going to do that. So some of the things that we can do to isolate an x are add and subtract something to both sides. So if you add it to the left, you have to add it to the right. And we can also multiply and or divide on the left and right. Yeah, whatever you do to the left, as long as you do it to the right, this guy right here stays true. That's the ultimate goal when you go through this process of solving an equation. You want to keep that equal sign true. Alright, so I've got 8x divided by 5 minus 5, and that equals 27. So what it's saying is I've taken some number, I've multiplied it by 8, then I divided that by 5, and then I subtracted 5, and I got 27. Well, what number is it? Well, to get it, to figure out what number that is, what x is, you have to go backwards through that process. So the last thing I do, order of operations, I multiply, divide, subtract. Last thing I do is subtract. So to work backwards, I need to add. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides of this thing. Alright, and that's going to leave me with, on the left hand side, just the 8x over 5. And on the right hand side, 27 plus 5 is 32. Okay, so far I've got 8x divided by 5 equals 32. Now, again, order of operations. I multiply by 8, I divide by 5. Reverse, I would divide it by 5, so reverse order, I would multiply by 5 to get that 5 out of the denominator. So if I do it to the left, I have to do it to the right to keep the equal sign true. Again, that's our goal. Keep that equal sign true. Alright, the 5's are going to cancel. I'm going to be left with 8 times x. Alright, and then I've got to multiply 32 times 5. So 2 times 5 is 10. Carry your 1. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. So 160. Alright, and then finally, 8 times some number is 160. The last thing I'm going to do is divide by the number in front of the x that's been multiplied by x. And then that's going to leave me with just x. So that's what I mean by isolating x. Now x is by itself. 160 divided by 8 is 20. And so our solution set is we would put a 20 in that box. Alright, and it would have, just 20, not 200. And it would have this thing would then be bubbled in when you do your answer. Okay? So just go through the process to get this x isolated. Add the 5 over, multiply the 5 from the bottom to get just 8x, and then divide by the number in front. Now, if you work through these problems before also, you can get, when you get to this step, 8x over 5 equals 32. When we got to that step, you can also do something, since that's a fraction being multiplied by 8x, you can also kind of do these last two steps together and do something called multiplying by the reciprocal. And if I multiply by 5/8, since technically that's 8/5 being multiplied by the x, you'll get rid of the 5 and the 8 at the same time and leave you with x equals. And then you could use a calculator or something to multiply that number times the fraction. So 32 times 5/8 is 20. Okay, and you could also do what we did in the last problem. Like 8 goes into 32 4 times, and then 4 times 5 is 20. Alright, but there's another technique to do it. It just depends on how you see it. If you see this as two operations, multiplication, then division, then do it in 2 steps. But if you can see that this is just a fraction times a number, then you can take care of it with 1 step.